This is how Blizzard's cancelled MMO Titan fell apart and ended up becoming, well, Overwatch that we all, I was going to say know and love, but we do know, maybe. Now we love Overwatch, let's be real. So, yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting video. So, this is taken from a section of Jason Schreier's upcoming book, obviously, on Blizzard. There's a link to this in the video description below to the Polygon article. But it goes into detail on what actually happened with Titan. Now, I'm going to kick the video off by... I want to show you guys this. I'm just going to move out of the way, and I'm going to put this here, right? I think I'm out of the way. There we go. So this is concept art from Titan, which was used to basically build Overwatch levels. Now, if you look at this, you can see, like, London. That's obviously becomes King's Row. You've got Kyoto Temple, becomes Hanamura. You've got Berlin. That didn't really become anything there, although you can see the Brandenburg Gate there. Interesting, though, because it looks like Berlin is a bit of a ruin there, but then has this massive city in the background. May have possibly have been the inspiration for Eichenwald. Eichenwalde? We all call it Eichenwald, but because we're all uncultured, possibly because it was a city that was destroyed by the Omnics. Iron Star, which would be a Volskaya Industries, and then you've got, you can go through the list. Cairo, obviously that became Anubis, and on and on and on and on. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this is because what we're about to go over here from Jason Schreier's new book, it basically says that the concept artist and the artist essentially worked for 7 years producing content for Titan that we never ever got to see. So there was some insane artwork coming out of this. And I think this is, well, it sums it up, doesn't it? You look at this and they look incredible. As far as concept art goes, this looks incredible. And you can see, like, having this catalogue of things to pull from, that'd be insane for, like, a world building perspective, right? But I think we should get stuck into this because there's a lot going on in this. And yeah, I also do want to cover the cancelled projects that Blizzard had under development, which, again, has been spoken about by Jason Schreier, and we'll have a chat about them towards the end of the video, I think. But yeah, we're going to go for this first. So if you come with me, we're going to jump over to Polygon, and this is how Blizzard's cancelled MMO Titan fell apart. Now, this, yeah, let's do it because it's quite interesting. I think before we get into it, there's certain things like, with Titan, it was designed as it was almost like a split game, right? So there was the sort of MMO version of the game, which was like, whatever that turned out to be. Like, let's for argument's sake, just say that was like Overwatch, although it kind of wasn't, but it kind of was. It had heroes and it had sort of class archetypes you could select from, but yeah, it was a bit weird. But then it had this other element, which was basically The Sims, right? Which sounds insane, but it was like you lived a normal life in the day, and then at night you became this superhero. That's the way the game worked. It was a odd concept, and Blizzard never really got it to work. And it's interesting because you'll see they brought people on board from EA who'd worked on The Sims to try and fix it. It's very weird. Anyway, let's break this down. So this is how Blizzard's cancelled MMO Titan fell apart. And it's by Matt Leone, and obviously it's from Jason Schreier's upcoming book. So in 2014, in fact, let me zoom in a bit. Can you guys see that? That's a bit better, isn't it? There we go. In 2014, Blizzard revealed an interview with Polygon that it had cancelled the ambitious MMO project known as Titan, a follow-up to the massively successful World of Warcraft. A month and a half later, it became clear why Blizzard had been eager to break the news, as it was getting ready to announce its first game, the hero shooter Overwatch, which, as it turned out, was built from some of the scraps Titan left behind. Fast forward 10 years, and Overwatch has become a staple Blizzard franchise and one of the industry's most popular games. Yet it's hard not to wonder what could have happened if things hadn't shaken out differently. Fortunately, a new book excerpt from Jason Schreier explains this. So then goes into say, below, blah, 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 blah. So we'll get into this now because this is what the meat from the book. So way back during the ancient days of 2006, I was going to say 2026, of 2006, video game bloggers and analysts like to crow daily about the long-awaited World of Warcraft killer, the game that would draw away iconic Blizzard game, that would draw away the iconic Blizzard game's millions of subscribers. Seemingly every month, another contender failed to pull off the feat from the Matrix Online to Age Conan. I feel like I'm being, hang on, I feel like I'm being targeted here. I think I've moved them. Yeah, I have. I was about to get my copy of Age of Conan out. Then I was also going to get my copy of Tabula Rasa out, my copy of Warhammer Online out, my copy of Aeon, my copy of PlanetSide, my copy of Star Wars Galaxies. And no, I never had a copy of that. I know I'm lying. I never had a copy of that. I did have a copy of the other ones though. I think I've put it. I don't know where I've put them. I think I put them in the loft. But yeah, I was one of those idiots that was buying MMOs up as soon as they were coming out. Guild Wars too. I had that on launch as well. Like looking for the next thing. It was like, oh yeah, World of Warcraft. But what's next? So yeah, it was very much a thing at the time where people were like going in on developers were trying to make the next World of Warcraft, and it was seen as the thing to beat, basically. Yeah, so still Blizzard's executives suspected that a WoW killer would be on the horizon sooner or later, so they figured they should be the ones to make it. The natural next step seemed like a world of StarCraft, but they struggled to envision StarCraft lore fitting into an MMORPG. So instead, they decided to develop a new fictional universe. Blizzard Vice President Rob Pardo began gathering a small team of the company's top developers to incubate this project with the hopes of gradually bringing over the best designers, artists, and programmers from World of Warcraft. Leading the way would be people who had been at Blizzard since the 1990s. Chris Metzen would pen the story, Shane Diberai would head production, and Justin Thavarat, I apologize, Justin, I'm going to butcher your name repeatedly throughout this, would be art director on the new game, which they called Titan. Every day, the group would hold long lunches to bounce ideas around for the look and theme of Titan, which would be unlike anything they'd done before, grounded near-future sci-fi rather than space or high fantasy. How do you follow up the biggest game ever? Thiravat said in an interview for this story. I couldn't see how we could outdo the same formula. Other video games like Half-Life and Fallout painted a grim dystopian picture. In contrast, Titan would feel bright and optimistic. Again, these are things that, you know, we see very evidently in Overwatch's universe, and Overwatch is basically set in 2070 onwards, so, you know, it all makes sense. They sort of kept that world for Overwatch going forward. But anyway, Titan would feel bright and optimistic, perhaps attracting people who wouldn't normally play Blizzard games. We were really excited about appealing to a broad audience. Gamers, non-gamers, young, old, men, women, everything in between. Which, again, if you think of Overwatch, it has done that. You know, look at characters like Mercy, and Reinhardt is another one. Characters that are not traditional FPS game heroes, right? Yet they are in an FPS game, and they would attract players from other games. You know, you get maybe someone who is a tank in World of Warcraft. They might think, hey, I'm going to be a tank in this FPS game, and I'm going to play Reinhardt. You know, that was a crossover, which you didn't really get before. And similarly with Mercy, you had a character which wasn't about eliminating the enemy, but was purely about supporting your team. That makes a big difference, right? It attracts different types of players rather than just the general, you know, shooter crowd that just want to go around shooting everything, which it's still, I believe, the most popular role in the game by far, but still, you know, it's it did succeed in doing that. Overwatch did, but obviously Titan was designed to do that originally. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Titan would be set on an alternate version of Earth in the 2070s. The hook was that it was essentially two games in one, with players taking control of superhero-like characters who lived normal lives during the day and secretly battled against evil forces at night. An early presentation showed the player, a professional chef, popping a dish into the oven before going off on a secret mission. When they returned, the dish was perfectly cooked and ready to serve. It sounds terrible, doesn't it? It just does. A couple of years into development, Titan had a small but growing team of engineers, artists and designers who would meet for brainstorming sessions every week. The unit, which Blizzard called Team 4, and obviously it still remained as Team 4, I guess, after they went into, I think it was it Project Prometheus? I think that's what they called Overwatch before it became Overwatch, or the team that was left after Titan, something like that, I think it was. Anyway, it was envisioned as an all-star team, bringing in the best staff that Pardo could find, both within Blizzard and from elsewhere in the industry. People on other Blizzard teams would look over in envy, sometimes begging for a spot on what would be the company's first brand new franchise in more than a decade. What they didn't know was that behind the scenes, the game was flailing. And again, you've got to remember at this time, you know, Blizzard's at the zenith of its power, really. I mean, they've got like... WoW is literally printing money, so like it's almost like they've got unlimited money to play with, and I guess that's what they're, you know, everyone wanted to be a part of that, especially inside the company, because they're trying new things. They're, you know, everything's experimental. It must have been a good time, at least initially. for the creative types anyway at Blizzard. But anyway, as Titan Team expanded, bringing in veteran developers from across the video game industry, the group built a near endless number of prototypes. The civilian portion of the game, fishing, farming, photography, gardening, hacking. This non-combat section, which they called Titan Town, was essentially Blizzard's take on Animal Crossing or The Sims. Players would be able to deck out a house with furniture, run a business, and go on quests in their neighborhood. During playtest, the Titan team found that some of these game mechanics were fun in isolation, but nobody could envision what the game developers called the core loop. It sounds terrible. This sounds horrid. This sounds actually horrid. Like, what were they doing? What were they doing? Oh, dear. Or the sequence of actions that players would spend the bulk of their time doing. It always felt like it was right around the corner, right around this milestone, this thing where things will just come together. Oh, dear. The combat side felt more coherent, but was facing its own issues. Each player would be able to select from one of a handful of superhero classes, like the Speedy Jumper, which I think is Tracer now, which could teleport short distances, or the Sharp-Shooting Ranger, which is Widow, who wielded a powerful sniper rifle. Players could group up with friends to battle through dungeons and fight one another in team-based competitive battles. These matches could be fun in bursts, but the Titan team struggled to figure out how to keep players engaged over a long period of time. I mean, honestly, this sounds terrible. It sounds like, obviously, the combat proportion of the game was okay. And we know that evolved into Overwatch, and we obviously know that that became a massive success. Obviously, it was heavily changed from Titan. Overwatch is... Well, the game Overwatch was not just the PvP or the combat from Titan. It was heavily changed to get to that point, but the foundations are kind of similar. At least that's what I understand. But the rest of this stuff just seems odd. Like, what in the day, you're like in your town, your little village, then you're doing quests, and then you've got a job, you're running a business, and then what? Then you go, it's crazy, isn't it? It just, what is this? It just sounds mental. Like, what? But we'll see why this became the case as well, which is just crazy as well. Meanwhile, Riot Games was using all that League of Legends cash to poach Blizzard staff, including at one point nearly the entire animation team, and the underlying technology behind Titan, all designed from scratch for this project, was hampering the team's progress, whether it was laggy, incomplete tools, or faulty version control software that would sometimes prevent the team from working for hours at a time. So that's obviously not ideal. The industry had evolved since the days of Warcraft and Diablo, when video games had simple 2D art and could be programmed by a dozen people over the course of a year or two. Technological advancements made video games look more beautiful every year, but they also ramped up the complexity of development. By the 2000s, teams were swelling more than 100, and their games might take 3 years or longer to produce, which is funny, isn't it? Like, you think of that now, it took 3 years to make a game. That'd be fast. Games are in development for so long now, and then they... hello, Concord. Oh, dear. Anyway, moving on swiftly. The larger a game team grew, the harder it became to coordinate tech, develop a consistent art style, and execute on a single coherent vision. Which, think about executing on a vision and think about an art style. That is exactly what Overwatch did, because Overwatch, the remnants of Team 4 that was turned into the Overwatch team, was a much smaller, scaled-down version of the Titan team, and it was laser-focused. And this is like when you see things like, you know, comments towards Jeff Kaplan and, you know, what he may have done and what he may have not have done going forward to the launch of Overwatch 2. But these were and Aaron Keller and all those people. These were the people that actually built Overwatch. They had the vision, they put it together, and they made it happen. So I don't know, whatever you can say about them, they were the people that made that game. That without them, it would not have existed. And there is obviously a debate to be had about them, the interjection between being an artist and a creator and someone who's just a manager who's managing a thing which is just pumping money out. Because I hand over heart believe the likes of Jeff and that crew back in the day, they wanted to keep creating stuff. They didn't just want to make something and then it was their job forever and a day was to just maintain this thing by plugging content in that people would keep buying content, being cosmetics. They wanted to keep pushing the envelope forward, and you can understand that, right? You want games to be fun, you want to innovate. You don't just want to sit there and manage essentially what Overwatch 2 is now. Although it still makes new heroes, it still has new maps and whatever, but it's still, you know, a large proportion of it is managing that kind of output, which I don't think those guys wanted to do. Anyway, Team 4's artists drew concepts for Titan's colourful classes and futuristic cities, bright idyllic versions of regions like Eastern Europe and the Western United States, but many of the designs kept changing as the game evolved in different directions. An internal repository called Titan Art, I'd love to see this, grew so bloated with thousands of images that artists would somehow draw characters or cities, only to then later learn that somebody else had already done the same thing years earlier. I mean, what is that? That's insane. What the hell? The amount of art we did was enough for 5 games. Said artist Vadim Bashilachev, again, apologies for the name butchering, in an interview for this story. I mean, that is insane. That is actually insane, isn't it? But again, this is what Blizzard was like. Top tier, goated, best in the friggin' industry, best in the world at this. Their concept art, that everything was sick, right? I'd love to see this stuff. I'd really love to see this stuff. I don't think we ever will, though, but I'd love to see it. Microsoft, release the Titan archives. Or maybe Bobby deleted them on his way out. Nah, somebody must have them somewhere. Anyway, one artist speaking for this story described working on the project as an I can't even say that word. I'll just say deja vu. That's one of those words that destroys my brain. Interminable. Anyway, moving on. A state of deja vu, like they were living in Groundhog Day. They drew costumes and furniture. They'd take long lunches and then fine-tune what they'd already made. There are no seasons in Irvine, which is true, actually. Every time I've been there, it's just the same weather where Blizzard is located. So it's always dry, sunny, and 60 to 80 degrees, which made it hard to tell the weeks apart. Was that yesterday? The artist said. Was it last year? What day was this? What the hell? They were proud of the art they were making, but it was hard not to wonder if one day someone was going to come down from high and realise that they weren't making much progress. There was a feeling that Blizzard had essentially written a blank check to fund this game, which they had, and that bred a sense of complacency within the team. We were not working with any kind of urgency, so you can see, like, this is where the issues start to come in, and this is all stems back to Rob Pardo and how he was trying to run this team at the time, because he was in charge of multiple game teams at Blizzard. In fact, I think he was in charge of all the directors reported to him, I believe, for all the games. So he didn't have enough time to focus on this one singular project, which is probably the downfall of this, and we'll see as this goes on. It does explain that in some more detail. But yeah, making games is always hard. Making new franchises is even harder. And making a new franchise at a company full of perfectionists with the pressure of surpassing World of Warcraft with a team that was growing larger than that of any other project in Blizzard history, well, it was proven to be impossible. Later, several developers on the team would blame many of Titan's struggles on Rob Pardo. As Blizzard's vice president of game design, and remember, this became Ray Grisco took this game design role on, I think, after Pardo, possibly. Anyway, was overseeing StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3 and the rest of the company's projects, which limited the time he had for Titan. He at times seemed like an absentee game director, said one developer. To mitigate this problem, Pardo had brought in two lead designers, Jeff Kaplan, who had designed quests on World of Warcraft, and Matt Brown, who had worked on The Sims and SimCity at EA's Maxis. But Pardo remained director of the project and would occasionally jump in with feedback, forcing the team to change course and potentially throw out months of work. I think when you want to lead something, you have a responsibility to lead, said Connie Griffith, who works as an assistant to Pardo. And if you're not able to give it your full attention, you need to relinquish control. And Pardo declined to comment. So it seems, based off that he was never really fully committed to this project. And you had this massive team with seemingly an endless limited budget that was kind of just flailing away, doing whatever it wanted to do. But in his defense, the way of actually trying to deal with that was to say, hey, okay, I'm going to bring on this Jeff Kaplan. He'll be in charge of, I presume, let's say, the combat section of the game. And then I'm going to bring on Matt Brown, who's going to run the Sims section of the game, given his, well, work on the Sims, right? So you can see that, but then they were still reporting to Rob Pardo, who was still basically having, you know, ultimate control over the game and making decisions. Maybe he shouldn't have been because he wasn't internal to the team enough, which is interesting, isn't it? It's like a failure of management, and I guess you could apply this to almost any industry, really. Okay, let's move on. So Titan had gone from a dream project, demoralizing for many members of Team 4. Designers would spend weeks getting excited about an idea, then set up a meeting with Pardo to review it, only for him to shoot it down without offering an explanation or alternative direction. On previous games, not everyone had always agreed with Pardo's decisions, but at least he had made them. On Titan, he appeared to be unwilling or unable to commit to a vision. Team members said perhaps because of the pressure. There was this fear of the sophomore album, said Griffith. What can we do that is as good as World of Warcraft? So it's really interesting, isn't it, how WoW just crushed them. But what's insane to me is you get Overwatch as a result of the failure of this game, which was bigger than WoW when it was at its top height. I don't know where it is now, but I don't think it's doing too bad, Overwatch. But it's like, yeah. So, I don't know. Anyway, with years of development behind it and very little to show, the Titan team began building a vertical slice set in the game's near future version of California. complete with a suite of mechanics like driving and combat. Parts of the demo were excellent, but it became clear that the cohesion problem wasn't going away. It felt as if the team had made a dozen different games, but had no way to unify them. And that's interesting, isn't it? Like, you think of the vertical slice, like, you got combat, you got your lifestyle housing section, you're driving, and you could experience all of these in a little demo to kind of get an idea what's going on with the game. When you look at the whole idea where Overwatch 1 was meant to be the crawl phase, Overwatch 2 is the walk, and Overwatch 3 becomes the run, which is the return to Titan, it's almost like they were going back and plugging these things in over time, or at least that was maybe, you know, Jeff and that team's plan at the time before it all, of course, fell apart. Quite interesting. It felt as if the team had made a dozen different games and had a hard way to unify them, like a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces wouldn't fit together, and it continued to struggle with both technical and artistic challenges. But this was Blizzard. Surely Team 4 would get more time to nail down Titan. The work was super inefficient and the scope constantly grew, said one artist. But everyone trudged along calmly, assuming Blizzard would continue funding this endeavor indefinitely. Then one morning in the spring of 2013, as developers on the Titan team trickled into the office, they noticed that rows of folding chairs had been set up in the common area for an impromptu all-hands meeting. Never a good sign. When it started, Pardo stood up and dropped the big news. Titan wasn't working out, so he and the other Blizzard executives had decided to reboot it. For Thurovat, again, I apologise. This was bittersweet news. On the one hand, Blizzard was throwing away countless hours worth of work from nearly 7 years on the project that would never be seen. On the other, he recognised that Titan couldn't keep going the way it was headed. It was tough, but there was also a little bit of relief. Yeah, because, I mean, they're looking for direction, right? So you can understand that. At the end of the day, Titan cost Blizzard around 80 million, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it's funny, like, when you look at that, like, with today's lens, that don't seem like a lot. You know, it's like 7 years and 80 million, that's not a lot, really. It's crazy to say that, but it kind of doesn't. But anyway, remember, this is back in like 2013, so it's a long time ago, you know, 10 years ago effectively now. According to people with knowledge of the financials, many of its staff moved to Blizzard's other teams, while a few were laid off. Jeff Kaplan, Chris Metzen, and a handful of artists and engineers stayed behind to try and figure out whether Titan's remains could be salvaged, a process that would later lead to the hit game Overwatch, which transformed Titan's classes into memorable heroes. Later, Pardo stood up in front of the company, tears in his eyes, as he gave a presentation about why Titan had failed. He noted that he should have done more about the game's technical and artistic problems, which Team 4 members saw as a backhanded way of blaming other people for the game's issues. The last straw for some, that was the last straw for some. The longtime Blizzard designer had stewarded a lot of great games and was CEO Mike Morhaim's heir apparent. But now he had lost the trust of Blizzard and other leaders. Several executive and art directors demanded that he be removed from a position of leadership. So this must have been causing some major issues. They didn't want to report to him anymore, and they didn't want him overseeing new projects. So, wow, like, this was like a major revolt, really. As a result of that, then, Pardo took a sabbatical as Morhaim and his team tried to determine Pardo's future at Blizzard. At first, the team talked about potentially shifting his responsibilities, but after a few months, Morhaim met with Pardo and told him it would be best if he resigned. In the summer of 2014, Pardo announced that he was leaving Blizzard, saying publicly that he had made the difficult and bittersweet and ultimately exciting decision to pursue the next chapter in my life and career. The failure of Titan would have ripple effects for years to come. So I think that is extremely interesting. That is, as a a small section of this upcoming book going into detail as to why Titan failed. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you look at it and it just seems like a complete lack of direction. Now, what is interesting, I'll bring this up actually, because Bonfire Studios is where Rob Pardo works now, and he's been there for a while, and he heads that studio up. I'll just bring this up so you guys can see it. Well, I guess this isn't his website, but it's just like a post on Medium. Oh no, actually, it is blog.bonfire studios. I guess you can integrate it into your website. What do I know? All I know is WordPress. It's not even used anymore. I don't know. But yeah, this is basically Rob Pardo talking about, hey, we've got Bonfire Studios. See, in 2016, this comes online. So a couple of years after he resigned from Blizzard, he then comes back and sets the studio up. Now, apparently, the whole thing with Titan has kind of transformed Rob Pardo, and he's learned from that, and he's become a more focused director. So we'll have to wait and see what these guys make, if they ever actually produce any game. So it'll be interesting, I think, just to see where that goes. But yeah, I think this is all interesting stuff with Titan. And it's interesting because we're the other side of it, and we can see how it transformed into Overwatch. I still like to know the details of how that actually happened, because my very basic understanding of that was Jeff and Chris Metzen did a presentation in Bobby's little boardroom, and they were showing him concepts and very early gameplay of the Overwatch heroes, and with the heroes on the screen, like, so you had, like, when you're on the hero select screen, you've got like Tracer or whatever. I think Hanzo was one of the early characters as well. And Bobby's like, wow, I really love this because you're putting the heroes front and center. That means people will connect with them. So if we can write good story for these heroes, people will connect with them, and we'll have like lifelong fans of the game. And that's kind of where it came from. Obviously, the sensationalist version of that, which I've put forward in a lot of other videos, it's like Bobby sits there, goes, holy shit, we can absolutely make loads of cosmetics here, go, go, go. I hate Call of Duty because no one cares about operators, but this is a game where we'll love the operators because the operators are heroes and we can sell loads of skins. Yeah. Obviously Call of Duty was making loads of money, but yeah, that's kind of the way that went. So the next thing I want to look at is this list of cancelled games, which is interesting, right? So let's go over and take a look at this. So this is again from Jason Schreier, talking about a list of cancelled Blizzard games throughout the years. Now, these are just all over the place, and I'm only going to quickly jump on this. There was one game I heard of, and I'm not, like, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. When you're an idiot like me, people will tell you things because they want to see if you leak stuff, right? So they'll be like, oh, yeah, tell this idiot influencer one thing. Let's see if he goes out and starts talking about it. But this was years ago now, so I literally don't give a shit. And I think I even spoke about it before. But I was told, right, this could be true or not true, I don't know, that there was an Overwatch Tactics game in development, which was like XCOM. So it was like you had an Overwatch group, and then you had a, you fight against Talon or whatever. It was a mobile game, though. I don't know how true that is, but it obviously never happened. Anyway, what made me go, oh, is that kind of game is listed here, right? But it could be something completely different. I don't know. Again, I've got no idea. So, yeah, Bloodlines, a space vampire game. Okay. A licensed Star Wars game that eventually led to StarCraft. Now, this was very early days of Blizzard, like in the 90s, this was. So, yeah, but whatever. StarCraft came as a result of that. Shattered Nations, got no idea. Diablo for the Game Boy would have been sick. Probably would have been really good, that would have actually. Starblow, which sounds like I've literally just made that up. Well, what the hell? But this apparently was a sci-fi Diablo. Okay. It seems like they're like, okay, we've got 3 franchises: Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft. Can we make a WoW ARPG and call it WoWblow? Like, can you imagine that? Nomad, a post-apocalyptic turn-based game in development before World of Warcraft. Avalon, a Minecraft-style Warcraft game in development during 2013 and 2015. Hades, an original version of Diablo... so I heard about this one as well, actually. An original version of Diablo 4 with third-person camera, Arkham-style combat, dark tone, and permadeath. But I was told this was like Dark Souls. It's like they were going to turn Diablo 4 into like a Dark Souls game. That would have been fucking sick. Like, that would be sick. I don't know. That would have been sick. Come on, that would have been sick. Surely, Blizz. That would have been amazing. Anyway. Orbit, Warcraft, Pokemon Go. Didn't they make this? Or am I losing my mind? I don't know. Odyssey, of course, was a recently cancelled survival game. This is it. Orion, a mobile RPG with asynchronous turns. That's like XCOM, isn't it? And I was like, what? Or like Advanced Wars or something. So maybe my shit info was actually sort of fairly close. I don't know. A 4X StarCraft game. Again, I'd have played that. Sick. Call of Duty RTS game. I'd have played that as well. And that was actually, I think that was covered in another article, wasn't it, from Jason Schreier, where the StarCraft devs were just pitching any RTS game because they just wanted to keep making RTS games. But Bobby was like, no, RTS is not happening. So go away. It's not going to make me billions of dollars. Helldivers 1 style Warcraft game. That'd have been sick. Andromeda, God of War like Warcraft game. You see, like, all these ideas just sound sick and they just never happen. This was a sad one as well. The Battlefield-like StarCraft first-person shooter. And, of course, as we know, there is still a StarCraft game in development at the moment, an FPS game. That's going to be pretty interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition. And a World of Warcraft mobile game with NetEase, which obviously didn't happen because they made their own WoW game, Warcraft Rumble, which they have subsequently, well, everyone's been fired from that team and let go. So I think that's basically a cancelled project. Like 400 devs got removed, I think. And they were... the majority of them were in that mobile game division, which is the NetEase thing is interesting because that's Diablo Immortal, isn't it? Is made in conjunction with NetEase, and by all accounts, that makes an obscene amount of money because it is your typical rinsing mobile game. At least they know what they're doing, I suppose, in that regard. All right, guys, I'm going to leave the video at that. I just thought it'd be interesting to cover that. Now, there's going to be more, like I said, more of this stuff coming out in the future. Obviously, I've got a major interest in what's happened at Blizzard. I've got a massive interest in it. Like I've, for years and years and years covered their stuff. Obviously, made thousands of videos on Overwatch. You guys know the history, so I do want to see how it all unfolded now we got to where we are today, because I think it'll be actually sick to go over. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. And do subscribe to the channel. It helps me a lot. That does as well. And liking the video does. You can follow me on everything, which is @Stylosa. And, yep, I'll catch you lovely lot on the next video. See you soon.